Hello and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who is thankful this year for the miracle of modern plumbers.
Tim Longo. He's not a plumber anymore.
He's always a plumber.
You heard that though, right?
He's still wearing overalls. No, I don't think I've heard that. What are you talking about?
Oh my goodness, the dog's already starting.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, everybody. Anyway, the Nintendo has officially come out for some weird reason and said that he is no longer a plumber.
Okay.
I don't know why they would feel the need to do that or what it means. It seemed to be preemptive to Odyssey coming out, so maybe they're trying to, I don't know, prepare people for all of the different ways that he is going to be doing other things or something. I don't know.
Well,
the truth of the matter is,
he wears an awful lot of different types of clothing in Odyssey. So,
but he's always done that, right? I don't know. He's been a doctor. He's been
right, sure, in the side games, Dr. Mario, or whatever.
Yeah. So I don't know. That was they got picked up by the news in a kind of a joking way, and of course, a bunch of Nintendo fans got upset.
Of course, because that's such an important thing to spend our life on. I don't know. Who am I to judge?
So
anyway.
Mario 64.
Yes, returning to Mario 64. So this time we were aiming to play basically until you get to the second key. You didn't quite get there, which is fine. Hopefully over the Thanksgiving break you'll have time to catch up a bit, because I think we're going to aim for 50 stars to get us halfway to 70, which is, I think, finishing the game requirement.
I got to 24 and I started with 8, so I'm actually pretty proud of my. I think it took me 4.
Right, we actually did the same number then, because I started at 14. I made it to 30.
Oh, okay, yeah. I actually did go back to the previous levels to farm a little bit to get that number up. So I definitely know there's a lot more I can do in the recent levels. So I didn't quite make it. I'm at 24. And not every star is created equal when it comes to its difficulty.
That is for sure.
So it's fun.
And different levels are very different that way as well. And it's surprising. It does make it hard to plan things like this, because I definitely spent some time in the newer areas that we found. For me, that was level areas 6, 7, 8, the maze cave, lethal lava land, and the shifting sand. And having done, I guess, 8 in those 3 levels, I went back to get the remaining ones I wanted to get in.
Right.
In the initial handful. So
right.
I first was very exploratory, and then after a while I was like, well, I'm going to be at this for quite a while if I'm just trying to do it in these new ones.
Yeah.
Hazy Maze Cave in particular, I found kind of difficult, I think.
Do you, and you don't have, I mentioned in pre-show that I have unlocked the blue switch blocks.
Right, and I have unlocked the red.
The red. Okay, so you haven't gotten the green, which I think is the metal head.
The green is the one that is necessary to do
the Hazy
Jolly
Maze.
Roger Bay. And probably some Hazy Maze stuff as well. Yes, that's true.
Well, what is Jolly Roger? Oh, because you need it to blast through the stone pillar, maybe?
No, you need it. You need it to get to the one in the jet stream at the bottom. There's a star that's coming.
Yeah.
There's this bubbling.
I
up
saw it.
area.
Yeah, I saw it down there, but I couldn't get to it. Okay.
Exactly. Yes. I think you need to be the metal man for that one.
What's the red one do again?
It lets you fly.
Oh, so that one you need in the first course in
exactly in
Bob.
Right.
Okay. I haven't found that yet. Interesting. Okay.
That one's definitely tricky. There is
the
a
switch?
visual.
The switch.
The switch, yes. So there's a good visual clue for it that I feel like I noticed and did something about. It's possible I also had a pretty good memory about it. I remembered something about it, so I can't really.
Are they ever inside one of the levels, or are they always in the castle?
I think they're all in the castle.
Okay, that's at least one hint. All right, I'll do some searching
Certainly
around.
the red one is. So
Is the red one like the first one you're supposed to maybe get?
it is. Yes, I would say. I would say
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
I
All
would
right.
say yes.
That's another good hint. All right. Anyway.
Yes. So
Not
there
that
we go.
this is the hint
There's a
cast.
lot of
Yeah.
hedging around stuff.
Yeah. That's all
One of the
right.
things
Yeah.
one of the things we wanted to talk about this time in particular was turning to level design and the feeling that as they opened up sort of a little bit more space with this being a little lower fidelity, something we talked about last time, and is at least in part both due to switching to 3 dimensions and the burden it puts on the player, but also because of technical constraints. You can only display so much with a Nintendo 64 hardware, especially if you have to animate it all. Um, is that we return to the same spaces again and again, and they're kind of roomier. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about one of the areas where we spent the most time in, and we both seem to have spent the most time in Whomp's Fortress,
Mm-hmm.
with each of us getting 5 out of the 6. I actually get 6 out of the 7 block stars there. So, as a level designer, I'm going to throw it to you first. What do you take away, or how do you look at the reuse of space in these levels?
Mm. Oof. Wow. Um, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I feel like. Oh man, that's a loaded question. I feel like
Remember, a lot
with
of Nintendo fans got upset when they learned he wasn't a plumber, so be careful what you say
I
here.
know, I know. Well, I feel like Nintendo, and we've talked about this with every Nintendo game we've done on the podcast so far, but I think it's best exemplified in the Metroid games and the layering. So the two elements that I feel like we've talked about before, but to sort of to bring them back up again, the concept of like clear advertisement of your options, but potentially not being super clear with the directions on how to use those options right off the bat. And in some cases, we definitely have to talk about the structure of some of these levels. I'm looking at the stars really quick for this one. I don't think any of those require an order of operations to be done. Maybe they do. Anyway, point being is that in some cases they gate the next star based on previous actions that you do from previous stars.
Right.
So you have to do them in certain orders, even
Well,
though.
I think you have to do chip off Womp's block first, because I don't think the tower is there until he goes down.
Maybe. Oh yeah, you might be right. Yeah, interesting. I
And
don't
then
remember that.
there's the shoot into the wild blue. Is that a cannon thing?
Yeah, but I think you can access that red bomb bad guy.
Yeah, the helpful
Whether
bombs.
helpful bombs, yeah.
Yeah.
Before I think you can do that. Anyway, yeah, because the owl is probably there right away, right? You can get the owl first. Oh well, that's true. I don't know. Maybe the owl
Again,
only
I
appears.
think maybe they're all there after you've beat
Yeah,
Womp.
yeah. Well, but then yeah, I mean, the reason I bring up Metroid is we talked a lot about that sort of again the visual language of what you're able to do. But the brilliance of the thing that I've fully, once again, underestimated in a Nintendo game, which is so silly that I keep saying that because they've proven time and time again that they should be trusted, um, is that like there is a sort of balance and tuning in the level design and the basically the item placement that is clear that they have in at least in this level specifically we can talk about found a really good progression of difficulty per star.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is if you do them in order, they are ramping up in a pretty appropriate difficulty amount. And you don't have to do them in order in many cases, which is fine. But in a way, maybe that was some of the structural constraints, like you said, or maybe it was very intentional. But they kind of had the best of both worlds in this game, which say a Metroid doesn't have, with the exception of some of the shortcuts you can do in Metroid with like wall jumps and stuff, which aren't really
Right.
fully intended. But they have the best of both worlds where you can explore around and just say, oh, I'm just going to go for the red coins because I found a couple of them and I'm just going to focus on that. And many times, not every time, but many of the times it actually allows you to do that. And you can skip stars around. Like in many levels, I end up getting like the third or fourth star before I get the first one or second
Mm.
one because I just happened into it. Um, and that's kind of a great sense of discovery that you can do that, but then you can also just do them in order. And I feel like the order they're trying to train you and teach you if you stick to that. Oh, and that's the other interesting thing that I totally forgot that they did in this. They're almost like quests, right, where they tell you what you need to do next to get the next star. And I wonder which came first because I'm betting that the descriptions or the hints for each of the stars that you're going to go after in a particular level is their way to onboard you in the way that they would love for you to be onboarded. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And
Mm-hmm.
they might have started without those and maybe found through playtesting that people needed a little bit more of a nudge because of the three-dimensional aspect and because it was more open. Um,
That's an interesting thought. I don't really know. Certainly, having played quite a few of these games, they always I think in all the 3D games they have names for the various challenges that are based on the characters. Or so Super Mario Sunshine, they'll tell you, oh, you're going to fight this boss when you enter this area, and they'll name the
mm,
boss, and you'll get a little cutscene of zooming over to where they are, so you kind of have a sense of where you're going to go.
I
That's
remember
probably
that. Yeah.
later innovation. Um, and so you get this sense of, oh, okay, this is the challenge now, and then you come back and, oh, this is the challenge now. You are directed a lot more than you are in this one. I think probably they learned from Mario 64, and as they tried to broaden out further, they maybe doubled down on some of that information that they give the
Yeah,
player.
potentially. I mean, it works really well. I was kind of just curious in my notes of which might have come first. If they happened upon something that worked, then they're definitely they're a company that sticks with something that works and they make it better and better and better. So keeping it, I can understand. I was sort of just more meandering toward to wonder which came first in that regard. The thing that I love about the level design though is the layering of things because you'll you'll if you're just kind of exploring, and I was telling Brett this in pre-show as well, the other thing that I am really kind of delighted by, even though I still don't think I'm that great at the game or at platformers in general, and so I get frustrated sometimes, but um, the thing that I love about games, three-dimensional games, especially of this ilk, is the exploration aspect. And I think I talked about this in the Super Mario World series, but I missed having more freedom over exploration, something that both Zelda and Super Metroid gave you. And in Super Mario World, it wasn't necessarily about exploration as much, but in the 3D version, I like it a lot more because there's no timer ticking down, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't have that super sense of urgency. And so if I miss something, as long as I didn't die from the jump, I can kind of try again. There's just a lot more analog nature to it. And I just love exploring and just running around these worlds. And I'm just really impressed with the layering they do of all the different, essentially star paths, I guess you could say, but they just kind of, it's this network of paths and options that are all intertwined, and you kind of happen upon stuff, and it kind of pulls your attention, like, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? And you just kind of before you know it, you've woven through all of these little paths and happen upon things, and then this sense of discovery when you get one is just really gratifying. You lose time very quickly in this game.
Yes. Yeah, it
Uh,
definitely disappears. I having played it before, certainly some of that is lost on me because
yeah, yeah.
I have a sense of what I'm going to need to do. Certainly in the earliest levels, which I think I did a lot, completed
More.
a lot more of
Yeah.
when I played originally. Even though I don't, like I said, I don't think I finished the game, or maybe I did with a minimum number of stars. I honestly can't recall because it's been so long. Um, but I knew what I was going to have to do once I get the red block to fly in the first level. All of these bosses, I can remember a lot of the eight red coins. At least when I started playing with them, I was, oh yes, okay, I remember, I remember this. Some of them are a little trickier than others, like the slide, the ice mountain, which remains my least favorite. Um,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. I got lucky and finished that on, like, I kept dying quickly, like multiple times in a row. And then I got the hang of, I guess, the correcting your momentum, and then finished it in one try. Oh, and then the other thing is that I mentioned really quickly, I mentioned last time that where I ended, I was on that Bowser course, and I kept
hmm
probably died 20 times in a row. When I started this session up this time, played it on the first try, finished it on the first try, and beat Bowser in my first throw of him, and
yeah,
just did it in one fell swoop, and it was
right.
awesome. Uh,
Sometimes it just goes that way, doesn't it?
yeah, I needed
Set
the
it
time. I needed the
aside,
time
and
away from it, and
yep.
and I was just like, I'm okay. I'm gonna do this. It's gonna happen, and then I just bam, 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 and it feels so good when you hit all those, those beats. And it obviously the 20 times I died beforehand helped.
Well, that
helped me
too,
with
and you had
that.
a chance to sleep and integrate skills and things like that. That's a thing that happens, right, to human beings. But
Yeah.
that's when we learn, uh, or partly when we learn. Boy, that's a whole big digression
Uh-oh.
of neuroscience that I could take
Yeah.
us down. I'm going to stay away from that. But some interesting stuff there. There's a reason why people who play a lot of Tetris dream of Tetris. Um,
Oh, I did dream of the game last night, actually.
There you see. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
You're integrating your skills.
Yeah, and I find specifically with this genre, with platformers of any kind, I do find that I have a threshold, and I'm sure everybody does, and this isn't like news to anybody, but with this genre specifically, and maybe everyone has their own genre that this is the case, but I find that I hit a threshold of a few hours, and once I go past that threshold, I really start, my skills and my physical skills of acuity with the controller go steeply downhill, and I have to kind of either push through or just stop, because I've just tapped out. Um, this game is better ratio than most, I think. Like with Super Mario World, that happened to me pretty quickly because I would get frustrated, I think, is part of it. But with this one, because of the exploration, I feel it's a little bit softened. But man, these little, especially Whomp's Fortress, I think is maybe my best example. Um, they're so tight. They're these tight little levels that are so pure and dense at the same time. There's just a lot going
Mm-hmm.
on in that level. It's not that big,
No,
and
it's really tiny. When you said that, I reflected and I was like, "Oh, that's true. There's really not a lot of stuff here."
no,
Um,
but they pack it in.
yes, yes.
And like as far as like level design, like 3D level design that any level designer should, and I feel terrible that I've never, I've played only a couple of this level of this game back in the day. I feel terrible that I haven't played it until now because there is lesson upon lesson in this game for 3D level design and in every little thing. Now they have one big advantage that all of the Mario games have and that's abstraction. Like every game I've ever worked on has had
Mm. Realism.
fictional context, where
Mhm.
you have to abide by it to some degree for it to be cohesive. Here, they're just like, whatever.
Right.
We're gonna put a rotating plank and a big wedge, and there's a sleeping plant, and it's
Yes.
just no. It's all based on mechanics and metrics for them, right? It's like, well, this is how far I can jump. This is how far I can shoot a cannon. Let's put this over here. Doesn't need to be a rhyme or reason. Here's a flagpole for no apparent reason, but I don't care. It's like, it's Mario. Like, it's the most brilliant conceit for a world and property, because they're unshackled. I don't know how Odyssey is, but they're unshackled. By all this
Odyssey
stuff.
maintains a lot of that as well. There's a number of basically you're going to locations on a planet, and
Oh, it takes place on all one planet?
yes. So
Interesting.
there is a little more realism, just in the sense that the levels aren't abstractly hanging in space for the most part. There are abstract levels. You can take a rocket off planet to another space where the rules don't apply. But for the main thrust of the game, you go to a desert level, and the desert stretches out forever in every direction. There's no
Hmm.
gameplay out there, but you at least feel situated in a real space
It's
in
a
a
yeah.
way that you don't in Whomp's Fortress or what have you. Um,
I wonder
but
how
they
intentional.
still go crazy with all the scale and things like
Yeah.
that. Some of the things that you can do, and the new mechanic of being able to gain abilities by taking over different creatures in the environment is just wonderful,
Hmm.
and surprising, constantly surprising, and yes, is just a blast. As I mentioned pre-show, I've already finished the game and am now dutifully making my way through gaining all the moons in the game, which may take me a while, but I feel like I'm going to do that and get all 120 in Mario
Hmm.
this time out, which is a
It's
big
Mario
commitment.
Month.
I don't know if I can do it in Mario. I may not have the skills to do it in Mario 64. This game
Oh,
is a
really?
little bit. It's just a little bit more difficult.
Well, yeah. I mean, once you told me about the seventh star, and I'm looking at how you do that for each level. That alone. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes, that was not something I knew about. I don't think when I originally played the game, there was a seventh star in each main level, which is getting 100 coins, and uh, some of them my max is in the 20s. So
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
even
Yeah.
I don't even know. Like,
Are those
I'm obviously not
coins?
spending time trying to get them, but still,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Are those coins that are placed, or do coins from killing enemies count?
I would think
Do
anything counts. Yes,
anything? Yeah. So
right.
okay. So you
Because
have to
with
kill every enemy.
enemies, right, but with enemies that don't, with enemies that reappear, they stop giving coins after a while.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So, or after you've killed them once, I believe. So
Yeah.
I think the expectation is you would get those as well.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, yeah, and then like the chomp flower guys give blue coins or something, like, so it's like it's definitely, and those count for 5 or 4.
5, correct.
Yeah.
It's one for yellow, 2 for red, and 5 for blue.
Oh, and that's why the red coins respawn, because if you are going to get that 7 star, you need to re-get.
Sometimes you need them. In fact, when I found the 100 coin challenge on Whomp's Fortress, it was because I was doing an 8 red coin run, and
Mm.
unfortunately, I then got the 100 coins and got the star and had to start my run over. And one of
Right.
them was a bit. One of them I seem to remember being a bit tricky to get. I can't remember why. Oh, I think it was
The
just
red coins
jumping at the right place or something. Like, one of the red coins was just a little
up
more of a
in.
pain in the neck. So
Yeah, there's that. The islands up above that. Yeah, and actually, I wanted to pick out one. Well, before I say that, one other element of the level design that is just really really impressive, and again, they're great at this with the other games we've talked about on the podcast already, is their level design merged with their mechanical depth, and the way they mix all of that together. For instance, like in Whomp's Fortress, they have freaking stealth sections, right,
yeah,
that are intermixed with. So one, and this is, I'm probably overthinking this, but one example is the second plant. Well, no, I guess it's the third plant. There's the one down below in the grass, right? And then
right.
there's the second one that's up that first
Up the
ramp.
stairs. Yep.
And then there's the one around the corner of that near the rotating, plank.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And it's a very thin walkway on the side of the plant there. And
Hmm.
they're reinforcing the stealth, but the stealth you're practicing stealthing next to him, which means you're finely tuning your thumb usage to move along the side so you don't wake him
Right.
up.
Right.
What's right after that though is that rotating plank where you also, behooves you to, and actually behind you there's another thin walkway with coins on it. And for the second level in the game, it actually behooves you to do some of that stuff, in a slow pace where you're kind of fine tuning your thumb there too, so they're reinforcing like, nuanced movement on the stick, in a couple different ways, all nearby. So you're kind of learning. Now, of course, you can barnstorm your way through that, which I started doing eventually. But when I'm first going there, I'm kind of being careful, and I step on the plank as it's rotating, and I'm very carefully moving along the same way that I just did stealthing by that guy. And so there's these different mechanics essentially, but all or different setups, but all using similar mechanics, and they kind of reinforce each other. Does that make sense?
No, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I think that's exactly what they're doing when they're teaching you to tiptoe around the plants, is that they're basically testing the waters of being able to move slowly. I don't
well,
feel
so
like, with small, as you point out, small thumb movements, I think is the trickier
yeah,
thing,
yeah.
because I would say previous to this, you have to remember this is, if not the first analog
No,
controller,
that's what I was just gonna say.
it's
That's
the
the
first
other.
analog stick,
Yep,
right?
yep. That's the other brilliant thing that they did. They started. I mean, I think we talk less about it over this in
Oh,
the
right,
Super
because everything
Nintendo
else
days.
was just buttons, even if they were the shoulder buttons. Is what?
You know,
What
this
about the
was
PlayStation One
no,
dual
dude. That
stick?
was
That came
after.
after this,
That
right?
was
Yeah.
remember
Oh,
the
right, because
original
that's
PlayStation.
PlayStation. Right, 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 right.
Original
It
PlayStation.
had no
Yep.
sticks.
No, they added the sticks later after Nintendo. And so we don't give them enough credit on Super Nintendo for the D-pad, but you could arguably say that the innovation was going on there with the controller. But the other thing that Nintendo is consistently great at, better than any of the other hardware manufacturers, is they design for their controller. And with this game, and I'm playing on the Nintendo 64, so I'm playing with the OG controller, and it's got the
The
one
tripartite, the
the
Trident controller.
weirdest, craziest controller. Yeah, but it's got that one analog stick in the middle, right?
Hmm.
And this game is designed for that controller. Like as I'm holding it in my hand and playing it, I'm even more convinced of that now because I have that one stick that is all everything is focused on. And to your point, in that they're teaching people how to use their new controller, right? It's like Wii Sports. That's why Wii
Mm.
Sports was such a. I mean, that Wii Sports is a tech demo for that thing that ended up being the best way to play the Wii in a way, and they designed it, because they designed it for the controller, and they're just a marriage there, and the level design is focused on showing you how to use this new analog stick that you've never used before.
Mm.
And we take that out of
Right.
context and forget, like they had to teach people how to use this thing and how tension actually meant something, and going a little bit on the stick actually meant something because they were used to digital D-pad, digital buttons. And it's, I don't know, they're just,
I think
and
they had the first analog triggers as well with the GameCube. I think every controller has some level of innovation like that.
yeah,
Of course, they had the first vibrating controller.
yep.
They had the first wireless controller. They had the first motion controller.
So that point led me to a point that I don't think we've talked about before, but maybe we have. And we talk about this from time to time at work too, and various places I've worked. They are not like, and this is going to sound weird. They're not as much game makers to me as they are toy makers, and I don't mean toy as in the controllers. I just mean the whole experience is like a toy. It's this very like tangible and fully formed and holistic experience. The controller and the games built for the controller, and the visuals, and of course the aesthetics of their stuff is just very toy like, and and they, of course, they started the origins of their company were not making video games anyway. But I don't know. They think about things very differently than a Sony and a Xbox, which are making, high end boxes that are intended to do everything. So their controllers do
Right.
everything. They
Right.
try to be the jack of all trades, while you got to hand it to Nintendo for focusing.
Right, absolutely. I mean, that is one thing that seems to be part of their ethos is often been, how can we introduce new modes of play and into the video game world? So they literally come out and talk about that when they introduce new systems. Certainly, that was true of the DS. So the first ever 2-screen video game system.
Yeah, DS, good example. Yep.
And then, of course, the 3DS, which layered 3D on that. The first portable system. I think the Game Boy is. I can't think of another one.
Yeah, I mean,
And even in the early weird 3D experiment, the one that really failed was the Virtual Boy. I guess is what it's called. Yeah.
Virtual Boy. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, then
I'm
of
not a
course,
Nintendo historian, but they
Game
definitely
and Watch before that, and
right in the Game and Watch. Oh my god. Right, so they push all these things, even the add-ons for the Game Boy, like the camera,
printers,
and the printer.
I had the sticker printer thing, and oh man, they experiment and to be honest, take risks, right? Where
yes,
I would
you're
say,
going to manufacture this stuff. That's definitely a bigger risk than some software thing that you do. That especially these days in the age of downloadable titles, actually having to make a thing is a real risk.
So I sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but I think it's a critical thing to talk about with this game, that the controller was what it was, So you're playing on the Wii, right?
I am, yes.
And
so
with
I'm playing with the classic controller.
Oh,
no, I didn't. Controller. My Wavebird sadly died. I was really disappointed.
Another innovation there, but
yes, I love the Wavebird. Right, the first wireless.
That was radio frequent. What was it? It was some weird.
It was. It worked basically like cordless phones did, I think. with the channels, 16 channels or something that you could switch between.
Bluetooth existed, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely way before Bluetooth. And it had a little dongle you plugged in that was the receiver.
No, I had one. I'm gonna have to rebuy my GameCube now.
Good luck.
I got a copy.
Good luck finding a Wavebird. Those are a little bit harder to come by, I think.
Yeah, I had one too. Yeah. I got a copy of Eternal.
I threw it away this year. It just didn't work. I tried everything. But yes, I'm using a licensed Nintendo Wii classic controller. Yes.
So you have analog control on that then?
I do. I have two, in fact, and the camera controls honestly don't work quite as well. Not being buttons, I had forgotten that they were buttons.
I bet that's frustrating. Actually, yeah.
It's not too bad. You just kind of flick it instead.
Yeah, but it makes more sense. It
makes more sense
itself.
Yes. And I had forgotten with the little arrows and the icons to indicate, this is what you've done. Make a lot more sense when those are buttons.
Not to go back to the
like that. Yeah, go.
Not to go back to the camera topic, but really quick, an observation I wrote down that I didn't figure out until like midway through this last session. And I guess, maybe this is because there's not sort of a second stick to control the camera with, but I guess I didn't realize until last night that, because I started to, like I said, last episode, I wanted to try to experiment in trusting the camera more and not trying to micromanage it as I'm used to,
Mm-hmm.
And it generally works. The one thing I didn't realize though until late is the camera really tries to both autocorrect and predict what you were trying to look at based on the direction he is looking. So if the camera's in a weird spot, if you just rotate him so his nose is looking in the direction you want to be looking, the camera will
or his eyes.
Or his eyes. Yeah, I guess it's probably his nose. Yeah, I don't know. That's the biggest thing that's pointing in that direction. That's why I said nose. Of course, yes, his eyes. Anyway, if you point his head in the direction that it's really his whole body because you can't
Right, right. You can't see
separately
his face.
turn his head. But in modern 3D camera games, it's not usually based on like it's usually either you're controlling it with the right stick or they are framing what they want you to see based on different magnets and compositions no matter what direction you're facing, so it's not
Mm-hmm.
always the case because you can always autocorrect or auto orient behind the character, but I don't know why that didn't click with me, but now that I know that, it, like, for instance, in Hazy Maze Cave
Mm-hmm.
for the 8 red coin elevator area, which was rough
Yes,
for
I have a
me.
lot to do in that area. That was the one that, as I said, I've only done
Yeah,
one coin in. That's the one that I fear the most because I was finding it very easy. Oh, actually, no, I'm confusing that with part of the castle. I think. Oh man, I can't even remember.
that's the one
Hazy
where
Maze
there's
Cave is. Oh, you go
you.
through that puddle in the floor, and then you're in the place with the little spiders.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
okay,
there's
yes,
the elevator. I don't know if you've done it yet, but there's the elevator room where you jump on the elevator, and there's arrows on the elevator that allow you to direct the elevator by standing on the arrows. Do you know
yes,
what I'm talking about?
yes.
And
I found that.
yeah, and it'll hit things, but you have to kind of manage the elevator by standing on the arrows. But you have to constantly be looking in the right direction so you can see what the elevator is going to hit. You know what I mean?
Oh yes, of course.
And
Hmm.
so that's where I learned this orient Mario to orient the camera thing without having to micromanage the camera very much. So basically I don't touch the yellow buttons very much anymore because I just make sure he's looking where I want to look. And then the camera kind of takes care of itself then.
Ah, right. Yes, that's what I was talking about. I think last time, where I was saying I find myself taking pauses when I'm not in danger, so that the camera will reorient. And I guess
Well,
I
yeah,
forgot the critical element of, but I have to face him in the direction I want to
exactly.
go.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
It'll definitely orient, but if he's facing in like the opposite direction you want to look, then it gives you the impression the camera's terrible and that it's not doing what you want it to do, but it's trying to, but it's
Hmm.
based on where he's facing. If you turn it the direction you want him to face, it actually tends to be pretty elegant.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's true. I mean, it's a really really difficult problem to
oh yeah,
intuit player intention, right?
totally.
That's a hard thing that people have doing with other people. So no wonder it's very difficult for a computer to do it. It's discovering intentionality is. I knew people who researched that when I was in grad school, so it's a
Yeah,
hard problem. And in video games, even in a much more constrained world than the general purpose question, it's still extremely difficult to know what that player is up to, and you can only the best you can do is try to make a partnership there between player and systems. And as you're pointing out, I think that they do a pretty elegant job here, but you have to find your way to realizing that's what they're trying to do.
well,
uh,
and here's the other critical thing that they may have started to glean with this game because it was kind of one of the first ones to deal with this problem, but we know much better now. The third, I mean, I like your description of partnership there. The third partner in that, though, is level design,
mhm.
because here they definitely are making, they're trailblazing in three-dimensional level design here for platformers, so they didn't really know exactly how to marry that with camera design. But if you can get camera design, level design, and player intentions, as well as the composition of all those things together, that's the magic when you get all of
That's the
those to
sweet
work
spot.
together. Because like that elevator room, specifically talking about that one again, they made some weird choices of where they made it much harder on the camera than they needed to make it. And of course they could have just moved certain blocks here or there and it would have not been that hard for them to probably do that, and it could have made it better. Like things like 180 degree turns unnecessarily when the camera has a hard time kind of correcting very quickly on that kind of stuff when you need to go in a certain in the opposite direction you're going, or 90-degree turns, or like U-turns and things like that. It's just hard for cameras to keep up sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, man, a good modern day camera designer is an unsung hero, and worth their weight in gold, because if you don't notice the camera, then they have done their job.
Yes,
And
yes.
Remy Lacoste, I think I mentioned him on the cast before. He
was I was going to bring him up. Is he Crystal Dynamics guy?
Yeah, he was. He's
for Tomb Raider reboot.
Yeah, he was from Ubisoft
Prince of
before,
Persia.
and but the Tomb Raider reboot and Rise of the Tomb Raider, like, he was the lead camera designer, and he's the equivalent of a cinematographer, but for gameplay.
That was actually where I was about to go with that. Is that one of the things I feel playing Tomb Raider, if you're stepping back and trying to play it as a developer, one of the things I pick out is how well the camera accentuates mood and tension in those moments where you really want it and need it, how it emphasizes the brutality of a scene by being really jagged, deliberately jagged, such in the sliding out of control scenes and things like that, when you're going down a rushing waterfall and through a bunch of junk, or the sort of elegant isolation of climbing up that tower, the radio tower, maybe.
Yep, yeah, that's a good example. Even the opening of the game, I can't tell you how many iterations that, where you're swinging from you're upside down basically, and you're captured, and you have to swing. Just being able to get the right camera angle to be able to allow the player to swing back and forth with the analog stick, and then going through that water under that cave where the camera gets in really close and claustrophobic, and then angles a little bit, makes it really uneasy. And then framing sort of the puzzle in that area, and yeah, it's just
it's a masterclass. I would commend anyone who's interested in camera work to play basically all of Tomb Raider reboot, but especially the sections you're mentioning and the couple I picked up on as well. That they're just when you go into that River of Blood, as much as I'm not crazy about that overall, I do feel like the camera work there is quite good. So
yeah, but I mean, it all started here, and for the first game to try to tackle those challenges, they definitely get the level design and camera work. They do get it working a lot of the time. I think I mentioned it last episode in Bomb Battlefield, that spiral path with the boulders coming down, and the camera swings out and watches you from the side as you're going up, right? And it feels very fluid, and you didn't touch the camera at all, so. But the levels are so tight and nice and succinct, they can really afford, I think, to get to that level of detail. So,
all right, well, let's take a quick break and then come back with a little bit of feedback.
Sounds good.
Welcome back from the break. We're going to do a little bit of feedback, not as much feedback this week. Did have a couple of folks with quick mentions over on Twitter that I wanted to call out. That's it, at Dev Game Club. The first of these is Lonely Bob, who often reports that he's listening to us. Lonely Bob, always calling out to us, listening to our different episodes via, I guess, his podcatcher of choice. Anyway, he mentioned that, in fact, of course, as we knew, Jumping Flash, we didn't know Jumping Flash was the first 3D platformer. We knew that Mario 64 was not the first. Jumping Flash on the original PlayStation was released a year before Mario 64. So we appreciate that. I suspected it was not. It was not the first. I just couldn't remember, and I would not have come up with Jumping Flash, to be honest. So I appreciate the pointer to that.
Hmm.
It's it's not a game that I'm familiar with, so I
Yeah,
will have to look out for it.
it'd be interesting to go look at it. Maybe I'll look at the video or something to see, to compare the two, because if it was a year before, then Mario would definitely have been long in development already.
Right.
So, how influenced the two games were to each other, would be obviously Jumping Flash wouldn't have been influenced by Mario, but I doubt that Mario was heavily influenced by Jumping Flash. Maybe. I mean, again, the controller would have been different at that time. It wouldn't have been analog. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see what similarities there. And of course, we talked about Tomb Raider, which was also 1996, and they went on their own road as well. Not a
Right, and not as
platformer, but
I was going to say, not a
no,
platformer,
not a platformer, but
but
dealing
an
with
action adventure game,
3D
sure.
3D
3D
spaces with
characters and
third
cameras in
person. Yeah.
particular.
Anyway, yeah, I did see that tweet.
Anyway, thank you, Lonely Bob. The other one was one from Johnson Blue Xiao, who I believe has written in before from Hong Kong. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong, Johnson, but I think that's correct. He sent in a link of a number of retro-themed horror games, which sort of connects back with an email we read a few weeks ago talking about Silent Hill from our buddy Micus Ficus, who composes our outro music, or reworks our intro music to our outro music, who had asked about lower res, lower fidelity horror and whether that works. I will post the link in the show notes, but there is a short video, 12 games with retro feel or look
Oh, cool.
or themes that are all horror games. A couple of them I was aware of, in particular Anatomy by Mother Crow, Kitty Horror Show, who is particularly great. Somebody I really extolled last year when we did horror games on a horror game on the cast, and I think her work's fantastic. I know Anatomy is supposed to be one of her best,
Oh, I
and
remember when
I
you
had been holding off.
on
Yeah,
HIO or
terrific
something.
one. Right, it is on. It's an itch.io. So anyway, so thank you to both of you. I will put the links you provided up in the show notes. You can find them either in your podcatcher or on the website.
Can you humor me with a quick on a quick story that somebody told me at work related to Silent Hill?
Oh, no, of
All right,
course.
just really quick. This is shout out to a cube mate of mine, Jeremy. Jeremy Fisher. Anyway, he is terrified of scary games. It sounds like he hates playing scary games. But he was listening to our cast, as he does, and hadn't played Silent Hill because he's scared of the game. So he had to look up Pyramid Head to kind of just, because we talked so much about Pyramid Head and how terrifying of a character he was. So turns out his son had one of those blow up hammer toys, where you blow them up yourself,
Sure, yeah.
and then they kind of, you hit them and they squeak and you can hit each other with them, and they don't do any, obviously they don't really hurt. Sorry about the dog. And apparently they had gotten a box of goods from Amazon, and so his son emptied the box, put the box on his head, and drug the hammer around like a zombie, following, not knowing any Pyramid Head
Of course, I would
relation.
hope not.
No, he has no idea, and followed Jeremy around. Jeremy, already being a fraidy cat, saw his son when he turned around, inadvertently acting like Pyramid Head, and had a little freak out moment, not knowing that his son was doing. So he told me that today. I thought it was hilarious.
That is good.
His son turned into Pyramid Head without realizing it.
I tell you that some of the scariest things you can have happen after you have children. I can remember when my older son, when he started getting out of bed, so probably when he was 2 or so, he would just come in if we weren't awake and just stand next to the bed and just look at us,
Yeah.
sucking his thumb.
Yeah.
And you'd wake up and his face would be
right
8
at
inches
your
away
face.
from yours, and you just leap. Okay, I'm up. I'm up. Jesus.
Stop terrifying me.
Oh my god. Anyway, okay. Well, we do actually have some email. We had one piece of email this week, which was sent to devgameclub@gmail.com, and you have it.
Okay. Subject: are AAA games too expensive to make to survive on a one-time $60 purchase? Uh-oh. From James Roberts.
Dangerous waters ahead, Tim.
Yeah. Hey,
I can answer this one.
hey guys, I was just curious to hear your thoughts on this subject. With the controversy surrounding the release of Battlefront 2 and their loot box system, a lot of claims are being made on both sides of the issue. One thing I read a lot is this idea that a $60 price tag is plenty of money to make a profit off of a game, even one with a production scale like Battlefront 2. I also see the counter argument of this going around, that a company such as EA is so massive, employs so many studios / people, and publishes games so magnificent in scale and production that $60 price tag simply isn't sustainable. And this is why they pursue alternate revenue streams such as EA Access and loot box economies. I won't ask you to flat out say if $60 game per game is enough money for Battlefront 2 to turn a profit, as that may be in bad taste for two people still working in the industry. Oh, thank you for noticing that, James. But in general, is $60 per game enough? It seems like a lot of money, but I also remember my dad buying Super Mario RPG for me on my birthday for the NES, and it was $80. So I can definitely see both sides of this argument being possible. Thanks for your thoughts. Yeah, why don't you start?
Right. So call out, first of all, to James Roberts, who was one of our Super Mario World experts, as I recall, sent in a ton of information about the structure of the game that we weren't super aware of or privy to at the time that we started playing it. So call back to that as well. Good to hear from him again here as we're playing Mario 64. So my thinking about this is complex. For one thing, I'll throw out sort of a breakdown I did of development costs that you can find on my Ask FM. One thing that I'm still doing that is connected to my Twitter account is people ask me questions. It's associated with my Twitter, and when I answer them, they just go there. So if you look at my recent tweets, it was in the last week or two, and there haven't been other tweets for me in that time. So you could easily find my discussion. If I can find an easy link, I will post that in the show notes as well. But it just sort of lays out, here's how much it costs for development per person, so you can look at the credits and make a determination on your own about how much it might have cost. My counterpoint to the EA thing is Destiny. It's a game that was developed by Bungie, but as part of Activision Blizzard, which is just as big a publisher as EA is, and so has just as much overhead cost, and didn't have microtransactions built into the play. I think EA has seen how much money comes from these sorts of mechanics in mobile, but I think they've also missed some of the nuance in that in mobile, often 95+% of players for a free-to-play game never spend any money at all and can have a perfectly good time playing it, and less than 5%. I think generally people are happy to see around 2% convert to actual money, and that pays for everybody else who's playing the game. It seems to me a bit excessive to charge a full price for a game, and then additionally microtransactions. Some of the bigger wish fulfillment characters in the universe, such as Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader. If you're going to buy a Star Wars game where you're playing these heroes, I would expect those are the ones you're going to want to play. So I have a hard time defending EA in this matter, in particular. In general, I think developing any product involves some clear-eyed realities of how much can we afford to spend to make it and market it versus how much can we expect to reap in return. I don't know what the background of the deal is. One thing that Destiny doesn't have to pay is a tax on the IP. So I don't know how much EA is paying for the Star Wars license, although that's public information. Finally, and this is again sort of with EA specifically, I worry about any monopoly of IP in this way, and I think it leads to these sorts of money grabs. It might be a little strong, but when EA purchased outright the NFL license for, I think, a 3-year period to kill off its competition, I think it really hurt the games. As I recall, the quality of the games dropped like a 10-point drop on the whatever on Metacritic or something like that over that year that they initially did that year or two that they initially did that. I think it really hurts. And I think that those are a lot of the factors that might be in play. Anyway, those are kind of my broad thoughts. I haven't played any Battlefront 2, so, and I don't intend to. I don't enjoy multiplayer shooters, and haven't for quite some time. So I can't really comment directly on this implementation, but I have read a fair amount about it, as apparently James has. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if you have any to add, sir.
Well, I probably do have. I know I have a lot to add from my own perspective, because we dabble in this space in Halo, with Halo 5, and in no way tooting our own horn. We were definitely trying to trailblaze a few things with Halo 5. Getting into the microtrans aspect into a $60 box product, I'm gonna probably refrain from getting into on the cast, because I definitely try to divide, my personal work on the podcast and my professional life, and I don't want to kind of speak for the company on the cast. I want to separate those things. So I think Brett did a good summary of some of the similar things that I might have said. But the one thing I will say to the specific question that James asked on, is $60 per game enough these days? I will say, in a general sense, at the scale that these really big games like a Battlefront 2 or a Halo 5 or Battlefield or something like that, at the scale that these games run with the team sizes they have, and really one of the big contributing factors is this generation of hardware, and what these boxes can amazingly do. The development costs have risen to a pretty astronomical size.
Yep.
And
yeah, that was my point, I think, in pointing out that ask.fm response is that,
they're breaking
games,
why that's the case.
The expensive is these games are way more expensive to make than they were when we were making them at LucasArts for $50. I think that was the price then. I think that was the big deal, moving from 50 to 60.
And his Super Nintendo point that he made comes up all the time in various places, and whether the market would accept a higher price point. I think from a not being an economist in any way myself, but from a sort of trajectory of cost and ROI perspective, probably games should be those sorts of games should be more expensive for a box product these days than they are. $60 really isn't. That price has flattened for many, many years at this point.
That's true. Yes.
And it just those.
Where's the cost of making? I mean, that's one of the reasons people will say that making AAA games has become unsustainable.
Yeah.
There's other reasons, but one of them is the price per unit being fixed for so long. I think it was at the beginning. Was it the beginning of the 360?
360, yeah. It was
and
led
PS3
by
cycle.
Microsoft, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I mean, but I feel like for a multiplayer game, what's driven a lot of design into multiplayer systems that keep you engaged for a long period of time with different sort of rewards and perks and things like that has been to basically get the players to hold on to the game for longer so that there isn't as much of a used market. So people who want to be there and who fear missing out in the initial experience and being able to keep pace with those people, all buy the game at the beginning of its life cycle, and that it doesn't see a lot of turnover in the game stores. I would say there's other ways to deal with that. And
oh yeah. I mean, used is part of it, but
and
it's just the continued revenue, right?
right. No,
Monthly
it's
active users is becoming more of a important metric than actual game sales, and so people think
right.
of the lifespan of games way differently now. There is, to your earlier point, there are better ways to implement these systems than others. You can definitely mess it up, even in just the tuning and balancing, which it seems like what the outcry is for Battlefront 2 specifically, because it takes so long, to not spend money and unlock things. But anyway, yeah. I mean, he's right to some degree that, don't you agree that the sustainability side of these sorts of epic scale games is, we're seeing the development community kind of, react to this kind of stuff right now with some of these closures, and like it's gotten
it happens it happens every generation.
Crazy out there.
Right. It happens every generation. Every set of new hardware sees some surprising craters of companies that just up and close. It feels like overnight, because of one or two bad bets. It is a very hit-driven business as well. That's always been the case, and your one hit will fund basically all your failures. This is such a huge topic. I feel like the industry is not great about killing things early. Things are way too expensive. I do think you're essentially paying some executives to decide that you want to have loot boxes in your games, and that's a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah.
Or consultants or what have you. I don't even know.
Yeah, it's complex.
With EA, at least it's public, and a lot of this information is public because they have to do an earnings call every year. There are SEC requirements on what they have to report to their investors. So if you bought a share of EA stock, you could presumably get a report every year telling you what they pay for things like the Star Wars license. Some of that is reported in the news, some of it isn't, and you could see their P&L and really kind of make that decision for yourself. I've been lucky in that I've always worked for private companies, and I think there's a little bit more flexibility there. And I think that's been pretty healthy. And in the first half, I was at a company with an owner with really deep pockets in George Lucas, and later on, I was at a company with really deep pockets because of huge success at Bethesda Game Studios. So I've just been kind of lucky not to have these issues to think about often, and to be able to go after the game development in different ways. But it is a difficult issue, and I feel like the market for the games is not growing at a pace to sustain the price that they're at, and that something will have to shift if we were to have another generation.
It does seem like something has to give
in 5 years. Yeah. And there's a lot of ways to go after that, but anyway, I think this one is a misstep. I think certainly I've seen the game, and although it doesn't appeal to me particularly, it is gorgeous. I'm not going to argue. I'm sure there's tons of refinement there, in things that I haven't even seen. But yeah, tough business, and tough business to compete in with the multiplayer shooters as well. So I don't know.
It does have a campaign.
Games I most want to play are on the Switch these days, which are abstract and don't look as expensive.
Yeah. It's a heavy
Which is
one.
another way to go. Yeah, that's a big, heavy question. But thank you for it, James. I hope we did it at least a little
Yeah, sorry. I mean,
justice.
I definitely, like I said, I could wade into this for hours, as I do in my daily life, and I just not fully comfortable getting into it too deeply. So I apologize, James, but yeah.
All right, we have a few reviews. This is the end of the review train. We need some new ones. I mentioned last time. This first one is very nice by TJ Mackey 432. If that is your real name, are you from the New Jersey 432s? Anyway, heard about you from the Game Junk podcast and figured I'd give you a listen. I've only listened to the link to the past episodes so far, but can already tell I'll be coming back for more. Y'all do a great job of keeping the talk flowing through all the different aspects without going too deep down any one certain rabbit hole. Perfect. Keep up the great work. Thank you, TJ Mackey 432. Again, if that is your real name. I gave you one as well.
Yes. Great for Game Lovers by Joe T74, or Joet, as I like to say. That's how they say it in New Jersey.
They make some fine champagne, don't they, Joe?
Yeah, right. Joet. Right. I enjoy listening to pros talk about almost anything. I live close to a Star Wars store that only sells Star Wars toys. Huh. I can listen to those guys talk about why some figures are worth more than others, and I'm not a collector. When people have that depth of knowledge about a specific subject, I find it fascinating. Tim and Brett really know what they are talking about. Fooled you about, and have a real love for video games. As a father that works about 60 hours a week, good for you, sir. Or maybe, I guess, good for you. I know how hard
I
it
hope he
is.
loves what he
I hope
does.
he loves what he does. Yeah, that's two jobs there. I love how hard it is to. I love how hard it is to fit.
I know
I
how
know.
hard it is.
Sorry, I know how hard it is to fit extracurriculars into a packed schedule. I really appreciate that they are committed to this and give me something to listen to on my hour and a half commute. Thanks, guys. Keep up the good work. You too, Joet. Being a dad with 60 hours a week, that is something else. So good for you.
Well, that's a lot, and I appreciate the listen. 60 hours a week, my goodness. I really like I like listening to people who have depth of knowledge what they talk about, regardless of whether we do. I feel a kinship with Joe about that because that's the sort of thing I do really enjoy as well. Just people who are
Yeah,
really into what they talk about.
yeah,
And
experts
so
and people who are
hope
just into the depth of something.
I hope that comes across. And then I have the last one. Great conversation from two veteran devs, and I don't even know how to pronounce this. Smahimus87? I don't.
Okay.
I can't parse this in a way that it makes sense to me. But anyway,
Smahimus.
Smahimus! Have been listening to these podcasts for quite a while, and I love it. Listening to these guys discussing games I've played before has been immensely interesting and entertaining. After listening to the XCOM episodes, I now have a burning desire to go play the reboot, and this pretty much had happened for each game we've both played with a fresh perspective. Love the show. So
It happens with me every time too, and I
no,
never get the time. Yeah, I mean, I'm playing the next
exactly.
game, so I never get the time to play the last thing.
Well, here I am. As I mentioned, I'm
Yeah,
playing
yeah,
Odyssey,
you're going deep.
and I've been playing way too many hours of Odyssey. Although I have to say, I have carpal tunnel problems frequently, and the Switch controllers don't. If they're loose, not connected to I guess the Pro controller, I guess is what it's called, the holder. If they're just sort of separate and loose in my hands, I don't get any problems.
It's
So
better. Yeah, people have said that. No, that's not the Pro controller. Are you playing on your TV or are you playing on the? Are you playing on?
I play on the TV when I play Mario.
You need to get the Pro controller then. It's like the classic controller you talked about with the Wii, but it's for the Switch. It's like $80, but it is a molded.
But I like the two little loose controllers in my
Oh, well,
hands.
that's fine. Then if you're fine with that, then you don't need to do that.
I
But
like that. And
if you want a
can do the
traditional
motion
controller,
controls.
they have it. Yeah.
No, I don't. The traditional controllers are what kills my carpal
Okay.
tunnel.
Well, then they solved your problem.
They did. I didn't
Nintendo
even
wins
expect.
again.
So I've been playing that, and of course we're playing Mario 64, and now I'm itching. I'm just itching to go back to play Super Mario Galaxy 2. So,
oh my goodness,
I know I'm going to have Mario coming out my ears.
That's gross.
And yeah, thank you.
That's one of the worlds. You
Mario.
go into your ear, and
You go into my ear.
He jumps into a man's ear, and
gross. Super Mario Body. There's going to be a Super Mario. What was that old movie where they go
Interspace? Interspace?
No. Yeah, Interspace is sort of a remake. I was actually thinking of the original Incredible Journey, something like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic Voyage.
Mario's Fantastic Voyage.
That's
inside
right.
The
And we
human
go
body.
inside the Yoshi's body.
Okay, I'm sold. There you go.
That is a high Nintendo.
Concept.
Call me.
No, they
anyway,
already own IP. They don't have to call you.
Damn it. Well, license my body then. In any case, thanks for those who've written in with their reviews via the Apple Podcast app, and for your feedback via devgameclub@gmail.com. Of course, we love to read that stuff on the air. It takes us to topics we may not cover otherwise because they don't come up sometimes in older games, or they aren't our particular focus or expertise. And so we love hearing and reminding us to talk about those things as well. So thank you for those. I guess that's about it for this week. For the next time, we're going to play up to 50 stars, which good luck, Tim.
Oh my goodness.
Although it is Thanksgiving weekend.
No, I can do it
here in the US. So
I'm hitting a stride. I'm getting my groove.
You're sleeping and getting those skills integrated while you sleep. You're getting better at it.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be there. I believe in you. I've got 20 stars to go, and so you've got 28.
20.
Is that right? 26.
Yeah,
26. Okay. Well, you'll make it. I believe in you.
Yeah, it could be possible.
You'll do it. It's only a few hours a day.
Yeah, a few. Seriously, this last session was probably close to 5 hours.
Mine was probably that too, I think. We did the same number of stars, we just started at different spots. Thanks so much for listening. We will see you all next week. But for now, good night.
Good night.
Next time, sir, you will seize the means of production.
Yes. Oh, do I need to? Am I putting the episode together too and all that?
No, I'm not going to make you do that. That would be horrible.